with the E-2 visa, there's no guessing. There's no like, what kind of endeavor do I have to build, or what am I going to be doing? It's very clear. You have to have a business plan. Again, your company, Visa franchise, helped me with that. You have to have be like your personal funds invested into the business, and the outcome, for me, really worked out really well.
Patrick Findaro here, founding partner at Visa Franchise. Excited to have a former client on, Marcos Vieira de Souza. Marcos, thanks for joining today.
Hi, Patrick. Nice to join here.
So you were one of our first clients that after Portugal signed the Treaty of Commerce and Navigation and opened up the E-2 visa, got the E-2 visa using your Portuguese passport.
Hey, you want to come to the US, get the E-2 visa, L1, or straight out a green card? We've been doing this for the past 10 years, and we wrote a book. It's called Own Your American Dream. What is special about this book is that we went back and have spoken to 21 successful applicants who opened up their businesses here and who are continuing to live the American dream. Hear it from them, because they talk about their fears, their mental state, what went wrong, what went right. The entire blueprint is there. You could just buy the book right here. You can just read it and make up your mind. Continue your video.
We've had a few other clients since then, but that was a nice opening to the program. And how did you even find out about the E-2 visa, and how did that come about, Marcos?
Well, I've been exploring about different visa opportunities to the U.S. previously. The first route that I chose to take was the EB-2 NIW visa, which really didn't work for me. We can talk about that later if you'd like. But then as soon as I did see that Portugal became a treaty country for the E-2 visa, I was really interested in that visa because I am a dual citizen of Brazil and Portugal.
And Marcos, you mind telling a little bit about yourself? Well, I shouldn't say grew up, but you spent some formative years, like a 10-minute drive from where I grew up in Vienna, Virginia, and you went to a high school very nearby, Langley. Tell me a little bit about your background and your experience, and the fact that you're trilingual. It'd be good for our audience to know.
Okay, sure. Well, so my dad is a career diplomat, so from very early on, I'm used to traveling, living abroad. We did live, before we moved to the States in the mid 80s, we did live in France and in Paraguay and Brazil, of course. And I personally grew up in Northern Virginia from my mid-teens, like early teens to late, early 20s. And we lived in McLean. I went to Langley High School. And I really had a great experience. I know it's many, many years ago, but it's something I really enjoyed. And after I came back to Brazil to pursue my career here for many years, and I got married, had kids, and I always had that idea of sort of one day providing that same experience that I had for my wife and kids. So that's my background. That's what I wanted to do. I always had that in the back of my mind. And I guess the timing was right, when Portugal became an E-2 treaty country.
And you were building your career in Sao Paulo, different multinational companies. Why not just continue? I've spent a good amount of time in Sao Paulo, a nice city in itself, easy flight to Rio. It's awesome, of course, Brazilian culture, friends and family there. Why do this big leap? Because it definitely seems like you have a relatively comfortable life in Sao Paulo.
Well, that's a really good question, Patrick. I guess what it comes down to is I think my family. So my wife and our families are from Rio, right? So we have been living here in Sao Paulo for many years. Let's see, maybe close to 20 years now.
So we can hate on Sao Paulo together.
I guess we can. But it's at the end of the day, I think Sao Paulo, has, like any place, has a lot of positives, a lot of negatives. Yeah. And we were just tired.
A little more serious than Carioca.
Yeah, we're serious. Well, for the good and the bad, right? But good and bad, exactly. So at the end of the day, I think we just got tired of the concrete jungle sort of lifestyle. A lot of insecurity. It's a very polluted city. We barely ever get to see the skyline. So these things sort of after many years living here, said maybe it's time to move to a different place. In Brazil, it's very hard. It's becoming harder to move out of São Paulo, especially if you have your life based around the corporate world. So
There's not much.
not much outside of São Paulo, and that's becoming more of reality as time goes by. So maybe 20, 30 years ago, there's still a lot of big companies still based in Rio and other cities. Less so now, right? So a lot of these companies are just based here in São Paulo. Maybe Brasilia. For my line of business, I worked mostly in public policy and government affairs for the past 20 years or so. So basically, São Paulo and Brasilia are the places to be. And just to answer your question, I think the time came that we made a decision. Okay, we were not going to move back to Rio. Not much going on there, and I want to sort of try the entrepreneurial side of things. Try to see how that works. And no better place, in my opinion, than the U.S. for that.
And you chose a good state too, with Texas.
Yeah.
Very, very business friendly.
Yeah. And up and coming, the economy's booming, and very young state. Like we're going to Austin, right? So that's a very, I think it's going to be really good for my daughters, especially.
Growing up in Northern Virginia, I was able to kind of play freely with my two younger brothers and friends from a very early age, like 8, 9 years old, walk around the suburbs of Vienna, go in the forest, play. And I had a realization when I visited Sao Paulo, a friend from my college, and basically it was, I would describe it as luxury prison, where an incredible apartment complex, but until what age can the kids actually leave and experience the city? Definitely not 8 years old, 9. It's what, 16, 15 that they can go out and really.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the truth, and even so, my daughters are in their late teens. Even if, they walk to school,
they're scared.
Yeah. And you're always thinking about, is everything going to be okay? There are constant muggings, people getting mugged. They take whatever jewelry people have on, which is very little nowadays, but cell phones most of the time. Just a couple of days, a woman was mugged right in front of our building. So, these things sort of start to get to you after a while, and then it becomes more about less so much about your career and money, and you're thinking as you get older, about what things that really matter, and having this freedom to move about and see nature and do things that are fun with your family and not worry so much about their safety all the time. That's really important to us.
I'm sure you got out, of Sao Paulo, but it's hard to get out. It's at least hour and a half until you're out of the city. Where Austin, you can take your bike out, and there's amazing lakes and rolling hills. And
exactly, and that's a very good point too. Not that Brazil is such a big country and there's lots to do, but it's either very expensive or very burdensome.
Internal flights are crazy. I know it's cheaper Sao Paulo, Miami than Miami, Manaus.
Yeah, exactly. Or even the northeastern Brazil, if you want to visit the northeast with fabulous beaches and everything, it's a lot more expensive. I just booked a flight to Miami in 3 weeks. That's going to be about half the cost of flying to a state like a beach place in Brazil. So that's crazy. And plus, if you want to drive somewhere near the city, say you want to take a drive to the beach, and it's you have a long weekend, then forget about it. You're going to spend 6 hours stuck in traffic at least.
That's no fun. It's not worth it. It ruins the whole experience. Marco, so I know when we connected through a mutual friend in Miami, you had kind of a negative U.S. immigration experience, and I think you got too stuck where the adjudicating trends for EB-2 NIW started getting pretty rigorous, where I think the approval rate was 90, 95%. And then last time I checked, it was 60%.
Yeah.
And they really cracked down to, I think, basically favor people that are already doing the activity, already living in the U.S., already doing that endeavor, even though technically you could get it through a proposed endeavor.
Yeah.
And that's what we've seen for our clients, where we've had success with green cards for top talent like EB-1A, EB-2 NIW, but it's pretty much exclusively people already here. There's been some exceptions, but I'm glad that you were able to, stay on track and access the E-2 visa, and then based on how these initial 5 years are, obviously you can extend your stay and renew the E2 visa for another 5 years, or plan to get a green card because you're going to be employing a lot of Americans with the franchise that you decided to invest in.
Yeah, that's exactly it, Patrick. And I think, the impression that I got, like I came out with, a bad impression of the whole experience I had with the EB-2 NIW process. I think you're right. From the onset, I could see that EB-2 NIW is mostly geared towards people who are really actually planning to build something up in the US. But the way that it was sold to me was that I wouldn't necessarily have to go through with the project or the proposed endeavor. And that really didn't make sense to me, right?
Yeah.
And in the end, I think it was a little
very different than the E2, where you invest the money, you're flying to training with Assisting Hands
clear
franchise
path,
next week.
right? From the beginning, there's no questions about it. You have to have a business. You have to be invested in that business. There's no question in my mind as to what I'll be doing regarding that business, and your company, Visa franchise was super helpful in helping me find the right match, and doing all the necessary steps from establishing the company to getting a great immigration lawyer. Your whole team is always available, so that was really helpful. Unlike the experience, again, I don't go back all the time to that experience I had, but with the EB-2 NIW, I applied once. I got an RFE, which is basically they asked for further information, which I thought was not that bad actually. But the answer that the company provided, I didn't think was that great, and it wasn't, because it was denied. And then I refiled, which was still within the scope of their work. And I always had a hard time trying to reach someone, trying to talk about what was going on, what the next steps would be. And then I got another RFE. Again, they requested additional information, and they provided just a cookie cutter answer, like didn't work, and that it got denied again. And then right after that denial, they were super quick in reaching out to me, asking for more money to file for a third time, right?
What, 3 times? Yeah, not adjust strategy,
and then exactly. And then that's when I said, enough. Look, this is not working. I don't like your approach. I'll let them know about that. I always had a hard time actually talking to someone. But when, as soon as my second refiling didn't work, they were super quick in reaching out to me. And that made a really horrible impression.
Yeah, no, I've had similar experience with some technology providers where it's just like there's the client service person, but they're really more of the sales person. And I think the two roles should be very divided.
Yeah.
Client services shouldn't be commissioned salespeople. They should have a salary. They should always, like, we want to have a wow factor. So you refer friends, and we get a lot of client referrals. So like the team members that you worked with, none of them are, getting commissions or, selling you extra items that you don't need.
Yeah. I mean, and that was super clear from the onset, right? Everyone, including yourself, you're always made yourself available. Your team, they're always helpful. They were always there for me whenever I had a question. But through all communication means like email, messaging. So from the beginning, it was super easy, and super helpful. I was super happy with your service, and I think so it was super happy with it, and the way it worked out, I started thinking about it, I guess mid 2024, and then that's when we started. I think we established our relationship when we signed the contract. And then from there, I picked a business within like 2 to 3 months. I did look at, 4 or 5 different opportunities. And then
what besides senior care, in-home care, which you eventually decided on, what other industries did Laura and the team look at?
I looked at insurance, mostly auto insurance. I also looked at an accounting business and sort of a home cleaning business.
Okay.
And these are all good businesses, right? Franchises. So, but at the end, I really liked the home care industry because it has purpose to it. It's something that I really like to do, because I see basically my role as a franchise owner will be to make sure that I hire and retain caregivers. So I really have to take care of them. They have to like working for me or for my company, and we have to provide excellent service to mostly senior citizens who need help. So there's a lot of purpose to that. I can really see myself being, eager to work every day. Not just looking at the bottom line. That's something I like working.
Money will definitely come, and you
Exactly.
execute the plan.
Exactly. So that, and the company that I chose, Assisting Hands, I spoke, I think, with maybe one other company, but just the way they're set up and the people that run the company,
Was it the culture?
the culture,
Yeah.
they have a motto: family owned, family operated. That's exactly what it is, right? So it's great. So I'm super happy on all sides of this endeavor. From Visa franchise to Assisting Hands. And again, it took maybe about a year or so to get the whole process through, because I didn't want to rush through it. I think if I
I think
really,
a year is good.
yeah,
I wouldn't. I think a year is a good time frame from start to finish
yeah,
to then be opening the business.
yeah,
Obviously, we could try to get it down to 6 or 9 months, but then that would cut parts of the process. And it's different if you're just a single guy without a family. You also have the personal component. You can't
exactly.
just move one day to the next in an apartment and be opening the business.
Yeah, and as you said, everything's clear cut, right? With the E-2 visa, there's no guessing. There's no like, what kind of endeavor do I have to build, or what am I going to be doing? It's very clear. You have to have a business plan, and your company, Visa franchise, helped me with that. You have to have be like your personal funds invested into the business, and the outcome, for me, really worked out really well.
What are some of the bumps that came up along the way? I know relocating. I've relocated. I lived in Brazil, France. It's a lot. Moving countries, moving family. What were some of the things that maybe weren't anticipated, or was it just different with because you already had such an international experience living in Paraguay and in the U.S. and in France?
Well, it takes a lot to get things planned well, right? So at the end of the day, I would say moving to the U.S., as you know, you have to take a lot of, care of a lot of details. Where you're going to live, what city. Well, actually, we picked the business. We weren't certain where we're going to live, because there were opportunities for Assisting Hands all over the U.S. And I think we needed to find a combination of a place where it's going to be good for our family, that was going to be within our affordability, right? Like a nice place to live and a good.
Not Miami.
Exactly.
Miami's gotten crazy
Not
over
Miami,
the
not
last
New
15
York,
years.
and not even Northern
Yeah.
Virginia nowadays, right? Because it's so
Yes.
expensive up there, and the business was a little bit saturated in that region. So picking a place to live, that's a big one. And I think we, as someone who hadn't lived in the U.S. for many, many decades, like, I lived there, as I said, the last time I lived in the U.S. was in early 90s. I had no credit history. So that's a big, issue. So you have to keep that in mind. Once you establish your business,
That's something that
yeah,
maybe you can be our first. We do for free for you as the guinea pig, but that's something that we're gonna start offering, where you set up, basically improve your EIN credit score, your company credit score,
yeah,
and then also your
personal,
tied to your social security number, your
yes,
personal credit score. Because if you get, you can start getting vendor credit and, relatively cheap financing. And especially for a business like Assisting Hands, there can be times where it takes 30 days to get paid, 60 days to get paid, if there's, some government component to that. So that's in the process. And it's I think an underestimated thing that we kept hearing from clients.
yeah. So that's super important, Patrick. And I was lucky because I already had a social security number, so that was already in place. That kind of sped things up a little bit. But I had no U.S. address, right? So a lot of credit cards, for example, require that you have a U.S. address. Some of them require you have a U.S. ID card of some sort, which I didn't have. I didn't have my Virginia driver's license from 30 years back. So that would be super helpful, right? Not only looking at credit for the business, but personal credit. So the sooner someone like who's planning on moving to the US, the sooner they can establish some sort of bank account or some sort of, even if it's a secured credit card, that'll start to build your credit history. That will be super helpful. It'll help you buy a car, yeah, and everything.
Depending on where you're coming from, there's a company called Nova Credit,
Yeah,
and they basically port your credit score from certain countries. I know Australia, I think Canada. I don't know if Brazil.
I don't think so.
Yeah, they don't have Brazil because they have a Experian, I think, or their affiliate has a big operation in
They
Brazil.
do.
But
Experian has a big operation here in Brazil. I think I looked into that, but it didn't work. But at the end of the day,
yeah,
I mean, I already had the business set up. That was super helpful, and now I'm just building my credit as quickly as I can. But it's already starting to work.
Marcos, what advice would you give for people whether they're applying with a Portuguese passport, dual national like yourself, or people from all over Latin America, Europe, looking to move their family on the E-2 visa? What parting advice would you give them based on your experience?
Well, first of all, hire your company. You're super helpful and super fair in every single way. I think like your fees and your whole team is great. But seriously, I think you should really look at what drives you. First make a decision as to what kind of business you'd like to do. Just don't do something for the sake of doing or just for moving to the US. I would say that's the first thing to think about. Second is where in the US you're going to live. Have to take into account affordability, cost of living, quality of life, and visit the place before you actually make a decision if you haven't been there yet. I think most people have visited, but myself, I didn't really know Austin before I picked it. I did visit Austin with my wife. We loved it, and just take these things into consideration, and I think you'll be good to go, especially when the time comes to build a business plan and actually have an interview at the U.S. consulate wherever you are.
That's big. I think we'll do a short with that take, and it's going to be explosive. We're going to go viral because
Okay.
those three or four items are things that we hear a lot, but you said it in a condensed way, and it keeps coming up from our clients where it's, hey, spend time in the U.S., spend as much time, try to take a little sabbatical,
Yeah,
use all your vacation, just be there, be there, be there. And I think that it will make it, especially if it's a family move,
yeah,
like you brought your daughters, your wife, and everyone's on the same page with this big life decision.
exactly. That's it. I mean, you really have to do your homework. Otherwise, if you don't plan ahead, or at least don't know what to expect, you could hit a wall, or maybe things won't be as smooth as you thought in the beginning. So that's absolutely necessary, I think.
Well, Marcos, it's been a pleasure. Obrigado pelo tempo hoje, and appreciate the kind words that you said about me and the team. That definitely motivates me. Where the word that's most common for our reviews is team, where clients use the word team. So it's a big honor that you say we've cultivated a great team, and I'm happy that we work together, and look forward to keeping in touch and seeing if we can help you, whether it's for free building your business credit or other items.
Well, Patrick, thank you again. Everything I said is absolutely true. Your team is great. You're great. Laura, Marcos. I don't want to mention names because I'm really,
You can. I think it's
yeah,
fine.
I'm going to forget someone. I know,
Oh yeah.
but that's why.
Yeah, you talk to a lot of people in our organization.
Yeah, and Grant, was super
Grant's great.
helpful. The immigration lawyer. And again, I only have good things to say about you and your company. So if everybody wants to needs a testimony or reach out to me, feel free.
And I know you worked with Tiago, who used to work
Tiago,
at the
that's right.
consulate, the U.S. consulate.
Yes.
And I'm sure that helped a bit with the interview prep.
It did. Really did a lot. So he was actually a former consulate employee, so that was super helpful. But thank you again. Super happy to have worked with your company and you, and hopefully we'll keep going forward together.
Ótimo, Marcos. Obrigado. Thanks again.
De nada.